Hello, good evening. So today we'll start our discussion on parliamentary form of government. So it's an important topic in polity syllabus. So first we will understand what is this. So uh, according to Constitution of India, the Article 74 or 75 as well as in 163 and 164 article for the states, and this is for the union. It envisages that there shall be a parliamentary form of government. So, though the word parliamentary form of government is not explicitly mentioned in the constitution, but parliamentary form of government जो है वो एक bedrock of the constitution of India है, as well as the governance system of India भी यही है. So the major difference that comes to our mind is what is the difference between presidential and the parliamentary form of government. प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट एंड पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में डिफरेंस मेजर यही है कि पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट जो है वो नॉन रिस्पॉन्सिबल गवर्नमेंट होती है. दैट इज़ कि एग्जीक्यूटिव आर नॉट सॉरी आई मस्ट इंटरचेंजेस दैट दिस इज़ फॉर द presidential form of government. Sorry for that. Parliamentary form of government is the responsible government, and the presidential form of government is non-responsible government. So parliamentary form of government may executive are responsible toward legislature, and for the acts done by them and for anything done by them they are responsible for the legislature, and legislature can put some checks and balances over the executive through various devices like question R, like no confidence motion, and so on and so forth. In non-responsible government, it's a presidential form of government in which executive is not responsible to the legislature. This type of government is practiced in USA, in Russia, in Sri Lanka, and others as well. Parliamentary form of government is practiced in India, Britain, Japan, and others. So presidential form of government, there is a watertight boundary between executive and legislature, especially it is more prevalent and it is of more visibility in United States. Okay, so we first understand what are the features, what are the broad features that we need to look at about the presidential and the parliamentary form of government. So one of the feature is of parliamentary form of government is the nominal and the real executive. So in the parliamentary form of government, there are two types of executive. One is nominal executive and one is real executive. Real executive को हम de facto executive बोलते हैं और nominal executive को de jure executive बोलते हैं. De facto executive and de jure executive में what is the main difference is de jure executive जो है वो titular head है, as well as जो de facto on the other hand जो de facto executive है वो real head है, real head. तो डी फैक्टो हेड को ही हम हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट बोलते हैं और डी जॉर हेड को हम हेड ऑफ द स्टेट बोलते हैं. सो प्रेसिडेंट इज द इज द हेड ऑफ द स्टेट एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर इज द हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट इन द पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. लेकिन प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में नॉमिनल एग्जीक्यूटिव और रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव एक ही पर्सन है जो कि प्रेसिडेंट है. इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि जो हेड ऑफ द स्टेट है और हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट है वो एक ही पर्सन है जो कि प्रेसिडेंट है. टुगेदर विथ मी ऑन दिस. द सेकेंड थिंग इज द पार्टी रूल इन प्रेसिडेंशियल इन पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. सो अ पार्टी विच सिक्योर्स majority सीट्स in the lower house or in the case of India it is लोक सभा, वो पार्टी जो है गवर्नमेंट फॉर्म करेगी और उसका जो हेड होगा वो अपॉइंट किया जाएगा बाय प्रेसिडेंट एज द प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया, एंड ऑन द एडवाइस ऑफ प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया प्रेसिडेंट विल अपॉइंट काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स और द कैबिनेट टू बी वेरी प्रिसाइज. तो इस बेसिस पे यहाँ पे अपॉइंटमेंट होगा. लेकिन देर इज़ नो पार्टी रूल इन केस ऑफ प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में जो प्रेसिडेंट है वो इलेक्ट होता है बाय द मेंबर्स ऑफ इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज, एंड प्रेसिडेंट जो है वो एक सिंगल मेंबर बॉडी है जो कि अपने किचन कैबिनेट के थ्रू फंक्शन करता है. बट किचन कैबिनेट जो है उनकी एडवाइसेस प्रेसिडेंशियल पर लीगली बाइंडिंग नहीं है, और ये किचन कैबिनेट मोर ऑफ कस्टमरी है. देर इज़ नो लीगल एंटिटी कॉल्ड किचन कैबिनेट as far as the Constitution of United States is concerned. Third thing is the collective responsibility. If I talk about collective responsibility, the ministers in the parliament, especially the council of ministers I am talking about, are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha and individually responsible to the president. This collectively responsibility of Lok Sabha is mentioned in Article 75 of the Constitution. So the ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha as well as individual responsible to the president. This is the bedrock of parliamentary form of government. So without any responsibility there will be no parliamentary form of government existence can happen. Okay, the next thing is if I talk about collective responsibility, there is no such provision of collective responsibility in presidential form of government. Okay, the next thing is the political homogeneity. That is, if I concerned about the aspects of the thing, it is the thing called the council of ministers. If they are all from the same parties, they'll have the same political ideology, so there'll be a consistency in the law formation, in the law making rather. So there'll be a kind of homogeneity that can exist as far as the parliamentary form of government, barring some exceptions, like if there is a coalition form of government, then there is a issue of consensus can take place amongst the council of minister or a cabinet as a whole. Okay, the next thing which is very important is there is no kind of political homogeneity can exist, or very minimal political homogeneity can exist in the presidential form of government, because both executive as well as legislature are acting in their own capacity, and there is a watertight boundary because the US presidential system is based on the doctrine of separation of power, where the legislative and executive are not the same thing. The president is not the member of the parliament or the member of the Congress. Okay, so there is a very minimal political homogeneity that can exist in a presidential form of government, so to speak. The next things is the double membership that I already talked about, that in a parliamentary form of government, the minister is also an MP. So though there is a provision in the constitution that a non-MP can become a minister in the parliament, but there is also a provision that within 6 months उस MP को उस मिनिस्टर को MP बनना पड़ेगा, अदरवाइज उसकी मिनिस्टीरियलशिप जो है वो सीज हो जाएगी. So there is a provision in the constitution as well. So broadly speaking, minister is also an MP in parliamentary form of government, but in presidential form of government, there is no such bearing on the president to be the member of Congress, or it is the inherent property of the presidential form of government that the president will not be a member of the Congress. Okay, or either of the house I am talking about. The next is the dissolution of lower house. If I talk about the dissolution of lower house, there are certain things that Prime Minister can advise the President to dissolve the Lok Sabha before its expiry. Okay, so this is the provision that can be said is इनहेरेंट इन द पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. लेकिन प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में ऐसा कोई प्रोविज़न नहीं है. प्रेसिडेंट कैन नॉट डिसॉल्व द कांग्रेस. ओके, नेक्स्ट थिंग्स नेक्स्ट. वी टॉक अबाउट द मेरिट्स ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम. पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम की सबसे पहली मेरिट, और जो कि बेडरॉक ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम भी है, कि वो फॉर्म करता है एक रिस्पॉन्सिबल गवर्नमेंट. Responsible government, because executive are responsible towards the legislature, and legislature can check on the executive by the devices called question R, the no confidence motion. Okay, so these are the things that can take place. Then second thing is it prevents despotism, because in parliamentary form of government, it is not headed by a single individual. It is headed by a group of individuals. So, in a parliamentary form of government, there is very rare chances of occurrence of despotism, whereby a single individual, where the power is concentrated in the hands of a single individual. So that will not going to happen, or that will rarely happen in the case of parliamentary form of government, so to speak. But in the presidential form of government, this can happen because power is concentrated in few hands rather in the majority of hands in president as well as the vice president. Okay, the next things next. वाइड रिप्रेजेंटेशन, ये भी एक फॉर्म मेरिट है पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट का. व्हाट इज दिस, वी नीड टू लुक एट. वाइड रिप्रेजेंटेशन क्या है? वाइड रिप्रेजेंटेशन, इट इज़ अ थिंग कि इन अ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, द गवर्नमेंट is represented not by a single individual but by a group of individuals that I already talked about. In case of group of individual, there is a chances of representation of various sections of society by various individual in the cabinet as well as the council. Okay, the next fourth thing, rather the new thing, is the demerits of the system. Demerits of the system, that it will create an unstable form of government. Why it will create an unstable form of government? Because there are tools like no confidence motion. So stability of a government cannot be guaranteed in parliamentary form of government, because government can change at any time and no confidence motion can be passed at any time in the parliament. There are instances of such cases as well as Indian parliament is considered. So this is one of the demerit that exists in this type of system. If party is in absolute majority, we can see there is a dictatorship of cabinet. So if I talk about, there is no despotism, but a cabinet can be a despotic thing in parliamentary form of government, and it is against the doctrine of separation of power, because legislative and executive are there is a harmony in legislative and executive forms of the government, and there is some kind of checks and balances. So executive is responsible to the legislature, so there is no separation of power. Executive can't act on their own. Okay, so there is the thing called this. Next thing is the reasons that we have adopted parliamentary form of government is manifolds. The one of the reason for that is our familiarity with it. Why? Because we have inherited British model of parliamentary government, and we were familiar with the British rule, as the British was the colonial power. So Britain, in Britain there was also a Westminster model, and the similar kind of arrangement was there in India as well. So we were familiar with the new kind. So we were familiar with this type of model. We don't wanted to experiment on that front. Okay. The next thing is we prefer responsibility. So if I say कि we cannot have responsibility as well as stability in the government at the same time. So we need to prefer any of the two. If we prefer stability over responsibility, we'll go into a presidential form of government, and presidential form of government is quite a stable form of government. But in case of a country like India, which is an infant democracy at the time, at the dawn of independence, uh, we inherited a type of economy which was classified ourselves, which classified ourselves as underdeveloped country. So we need responsibility to take over the stability. So that is why we preferred responsibility and hence the parliamentary form of government. The next is because of our nature of society. Because our society is largely heterogeneous, we have diversity of greater degree in our society. So we need representation of different sections of society in the parliament. So we don't want leadership of the country in hands of single individual, or rather in one or two or three individual, but we wanted collective responsibility. We wanted collective representation. We wanted representation on a wider scale to different sections of society. So we preferred a prime ministerial form of government or a parliamentary form of government, whereby the government is headed by prime minister along with a group of minister which forms the council and which will aid the president on that regards. So this is the bottom line for that. Okay. Next thing is that we don't want to see any conflicts between legislative and executive form of government, because of the country like India, which was very uh, which was very diverse as well as very heterogeneous in its nature, with very social, with very low socio-economic indicators. So we don't want any kind of conflict between legislative and executive that will hamper the functioning or the governance framework of India. So that is why we adopted this kind of model. So though we have adopted many things from Britain, but still the British Parliament is not equal to Indian Parliament. So what are the difference we need to look at between the British Parliament as well as the Indian Parliament? Or in other words, what are the major distinction between the parliamentary system that is prevailing in Britain and the parliamentary system of India? First thing is Britain form Britain's practice monarchical form of government, where the head of the state is hereditary, but in Indian we form a republican form of government. We follow republican form of government, where the head of the state is not hereditary but a elected individual. Second thing, the British Parliament is sovereign. It is based on uh, supremacy of parliament, but in Indian case the parliament is not sovereign. It is it The judiciary can exercise as well as the executive can exercise the checks and balances on the parliament. So parliament is not a sovereign body in India or not a supreme authority in India. Second thing is, in Britain, if we talk about prime minister in Britain, prime minister are of two categories. One, in Britain, the prime minister have to be the member of lower house, but in India, prime minister can be a member of lower house or be a member of upper house as well. Okay, we have three instances in which the member of upper house became the prime minister of India. One is Indira Gandhi, second one is Deve Gowda, and the third one is Manmohan Singh. ये तीनों राज्यसभा मेंबर्स थे जो बाद में जाके प्राइम मिनिस्टर बनते हैं इंडिया के. तो ब्रिटेन में प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो होगा वो लोअर हाउस से होगा, लेकिन इंडिया में प्राइम मिनिस्टर लोअर हाउस एज वेल एज अपर हाउस से भी हो सकता है. द नेक्स्ट इज लीगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. बिकॉज ब्रिटेन फॉलोज द आइडिया कॉल्ड किंग can do no wrong. So every act which was passed by the British Parliament have to be countersigned by their respective minister before being passed. But in case of India, there is no such provision. There is no such legal responsibility of minister. So this is the last difference that we talk about. So we see you later.